coming up.
I can allow the chains of my abuser's sin to fall off of me. Like God died for those
I
two.
remember you talking about that night when you came home. It changed you.
It did change me because I got it that Jesus died for my sins. I had gotten that. Like I was free from those chains. But I was still in the chains that my abusers put me in. And it dawned on me that day during that song that Jesus died for those chains too.
He died for them. He died for their sin. He died
Right.
for those chains. He died.
And I was able to allow those chains to just drop to the floor in my mind and just step out of them.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of On the Table. This time, Laurel, my mother-in-law, is on the table.
Just my elbows.
Yeah.
And mine too.
Well, we all know you very well, but the people listening to this might not so much. So this will be great. Can't wait to see what comes out on the table.
Hopefully not dinner. Though talking about myself, I don't know.
So why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? Just
Okay.
get started. We'll ask questions as we do, but just I don't know.
Alrighty. I'm Laurel. Some call me Lala. That's my grandma name. And I got to choose it. So that was kind of fun. I was born a long time ago. I just want to start by saying I am a miracle of God. And I define myself as that because of who I am today compared to who I was most of my life.
Yeah.
And God has done an amazing thing with me. So if you've read my book, you know some of the story. I'll share a few other details of it tonight. I don't want to hang out too much in my past, though, because I want to really talk about what kind of my transformation period and how God really changed me. Mm-hmm. So I will start with kind of my past, giving a quick overview of my past. So jump in if you have any questions or any thoughts or anything. So
In the beginning.
God created Laurel.
God created me in my mother's womb. He knit me together.
That's right.
So I was born the middle child. I have an older brother and a younger brother. And I was born in California. And we moved around a lot when I was little. I don't even remember, except for kind of my last home that I lived in. I don't even really remember all the other homes. There was a bunch of them. But anyways, so I was born into my family. We lived mostly away from all other relatives. But at some point, let me back up. So I always had this weird thing going on, and I couldn't understand why I was like this. Like when I was walking down a sidewalk to school, I would count my steps. And it drove me crazy because my mind was so occupied with that I hated that. Like I'm a creative person, and I wanted to think about other things than counting, you know? Mm-hmm. I was really afraid of my parents. I was really afraid of authority. I strove all the time to be really, really good. Before we left California, I was in this acrobatic dance program, and I strove to be the best. Like I worked really hard. Between the ages of 3 and 5, I learned I could do back handsprings, I could do a back flip, I could do splits in all the different ways that would make you cringe. I was nicknamed Pretzel because I could bend myself in half or look like a pretzel or whatever, you know, anyway, forward or backwards. But I strove. We also did tap dance, and I just strove to do. I practiced a lot at home, and I just strove to be the best. And it was it was this thing that drove me that in some ways I really enjoyed all of that. You know, I liked the attention. I liked the pageantry of the costumes and the performances and things like that. But it also, I was so obsessed with that. There was not much else in
Was
my
it like a pressure of perfection? Is that what you mean? Was
Yes.
the bad side of that? It's just like
Definitely, it was a
couldn't
pressure.
let yourself be anything less than perfect.
Right. And
Yeah.
it would devastate me, like humongously devastate me if I messed up somehow. Like I would just beat myself up. So even from a very young age, I was like that. And so at one point in our lives, when I was in my preteen ages, we lived in Colorado. And so we had, my parents had invited my dad's youngest brother, to live with us for a time. He was struggling. I think he was doing drugs. And during that time that he was staying with us, he sexually abused me. And so that really messed me up. And it really just kind of dug in that perfectionist thing into me. Even it drove me more and more and more deeply into that.
Sure. How old were you?
I was 11.
Okay.
And so, you know, at that point, I'm doing school and I'm doing, I played clarinet in school started in fifth grade. And all of those things still, I strove really hard to be perfect at. And I
Maybe
couldn't.
More so after that. I
Right,
would
even
imagine,
more so.
yeah.
I mean, I know now as an adult looking back at it, that the reason I was doing that is because I felt so terrible. You know, it's funny, we take on the shame of our abusers. And I just felt shame. I felt like I was guilty, like I let it happen. Now in my adult life, I can look back and say, of course, like an 11-year-old, they don't know any, you don't know any better, you know?
Well, and then you took on additional fear. You said you were fear as a young child, but you know, I don't want to give your testimony, but I know it pretty well. I haven't been with you for 40 some years, so, but he also threatened you, right? It
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
just, so it's no one else knew this. She had to carry this herself because of,
Yeah, he told me if I told anyone, he would hurt me. And I was scared to death of him, you know? And so I lived with that, still counting, still fearing, still striving to be perfect at everything I did. And then at the same time, feeling tremendous guilt and shame and depression and fear of making a mistake because that would reveal some flaw in me, you know? And so it was a big struggle for me. And I eventually, you know, we got into, I met Philip in 8th grade. It's weird because I was so insecure of myself. But one day we were at the high school football game of the local high school. And I think, was it the high school game?
yeah,
I think it was
we
the
were
high
in
school
junior
game.
high, so yeah.
And we were in junior high. So it just so happens he ended up sitting in front of me, like a couple bleachers down in front of me. And all these girls, you know, the cheerleaders and all these girls kept going up to him and they were being all giddy and, you know, and hanging all over him. And I was sitting up behind him, you know, taking all this in and watching it. And so then they were like, oh, let's go get some hot cocoa. And they ran off and got hot cocoa. And you know, it's weird that I attribute it to God now because I feel like he gave me this thought, you know, that's a human being down there and he has a brain and he probably wants to be respected, not just because he's handsome, well, or hot, which I don't know if God would have said that, but for his brain, you know, like that he's got feelings and he's not just because he's a jock, you know? Mm-hmm. So I actually got brave enough to stand up and go and sit down next to him. And I asked him to explain the game of football to me because I did not know anything about
How
football.
did you ask? Were you like, explain football me? Or like how nervous?
Yeah, that's
Those exact words.
Well, that's the only. It has nothing to do with your intelligence, but it's how the only way he could understand what you were asking
because he's a
he
jock?
was the jock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, ooh,
No,
yeah,
remember,
Buffalo.
I had this thought that he's not just some dumb jock. That
Yeah,
was
yeah.
kind of and that he wanted to be respected and appreciated for being a person and having not just that he's wants to be hung all over all the time,
Mm-hmm.
And now that I think about it, in this moment, I just thought of this. That's how I was treated when I got abused, sexually abused. Right? I was
Yeah.
treated for my body, that's what was like. So I think
interesting.
I wanted to be known for the fact that I think I have always felt this way up until just recent years. Like I'm more than what just being used by somebody.
Sure.
And I think I saw that with those girls. They were doing that to him. And I think that's what bugged me about it.
And you didn't know it, but the one thing that's always been a pet peeve of mine is pretense. I can't stand it when someone's just not being real, and so yeah, you wouldn't have known it, but I didn't. It was a good gamble because I just couldn't stand it. It's like it was all, and it was like no real conversation.
Yeah.
So,
For some reason, I
Yeah.
made that connection. And so I went down there and I said, "Hey, can you explain this game to me? I have no idea. Like what's going on right here, or what's a touchback or whatever I asked, And that started our friendship, And by the Halloween dance in October, he had asked me to go with him, and we just became close friends ever since. And I loved it because he treated me the same way. He treated me for who I was, not for my body,
Sure.
or whatever. Because back then I did have a body. I was a nice, thin, little, young junior higher.
still beautiful.
But anyway, so we met. He led me to the Lord later when
You're about 16.
about 16, and I still was dealing with a lot of those things, but with him being in my life, I think I was able to function better and deal with things better. I had a pretty rough time with my mom and dad throughout junior high and high school. They were not happy that I had a boyfriend, that we were so serious about each other, and my mom was really overprotective of me my whole life. She was extremely overprotective, which drove me nuts. Like I couldn't do anything without her.
She was always there.
She was talk about helicopter. She was like a grasshopper on my shoulder. Like she was always, she wouldn't let me do things that other kids got to do and stuff. So it was pretty crazy. And I felt oppressed, as a young teenager.
It was weird. Like you go to a drive-in theater, you think you're alone, and you reach over to kind of give a kiss, and then her mom pops up in the back seat. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
That would have been a funny movie.
Or that thing that parents, whatever you do to my daughter, I'm going to do to you.
That would have stopped a lot of activity.
We're only hugging.
That would have been a lot of activity. Sorry. Anyway.
So we graduated high school. We started college. I just didn't. I have a lot of interests. I'm like a Renaissance person, I'm a painter. I paint walls. I paint canvases. I paint faces. I'm a musician. I love the Bible. I love to dig in. I love science. I love math. I love history. I love all sorts of cool things. I love cake decorating and crafts, and I have a lot of different interests. So when I started college, I started on a music scholarship, and we started in Colorado. And that was kind of a weird time in my life, but we had decided not to go back, to return. And when we came back on campus, Philip decided not to go back because they had let in a bunch of freshmen that year who were well under the 2.3 grade point average, that it was their minimum. Mm-hmm. And we noticed that they were kind of dumbing down the classes. So we didn't think that our degrees were going to be worth anything by the time we graduate. So he had decided already that he was not going to go back. And I just was like, I don't know what to do. Like, we weren't married. I didn't know what to do. So when we were coming back onto the campus, he was dropping me off, and the band director came and put his arm around me. And he said, I had a dream about you last night. Yeah, definitely. Ugh. And he said, I dreamt that you weren't coming back to school. And I said, you're right. That made my decision for me. I could not handle that creepy thing. I couldn't handle it. And so we left there. We moved to New Mexico and went to UNM there for many years.
Way more than it should have taken to graduate.
So
which
in
neither one
my
of us
fourth
did.
year, I had been to college for 4 years. I decided, you know what? Oh, while we were at UNM, we got married during spring break when we were 21. So we got married before God when we were 18, but we got legally married when we were 21. And that's what I just wanted that more than anything. Mm-hmm. And then we went back to school after spring break, and I just wasn't into it. I switched majors a bunch. After giving up music, I tried art, I tried psychology, I tried accounting.
Grasping at straws here.
Yeah, I was totally grasping. And then I just realized, I just want to be a mom, So, of course, Phil's like, yeah, let's get right on that. So 9 months later,
I can help with that.
9 months later, we had our son, but when I called my mom to tell her that I was pregnant with our son and that I was quitting college, she had a fit, and she said the first thing she said was, I thought you were going to finish school first. Now, at the time, of course, I got really mad. There wasn't no, oh, wonderful, I'll be a grandma,
Yeah.
I was very upset. I know now that the reason she said that was because she wanted me to get a degree so that I would have a backup plan in case the marriage didn't work out. And the reason that she felt that way is because she had a marriage that didn't work out, and she did not have that backup plan. So it was
A couple marriages that didn't really work out.
Yeah. So she had, yeah. I mean, she stayed married to my dad, but if she could have left, she probably would have. I don't know. That's rumor, and I
Yeah.
Objection, hearsay.
Yeah.
yeah. And I don't know. But she didn't have a choice because she couldn't have taken care of herself. She didn't have any education or anything. So I understand where she was coming from. But in that moment, I was pretty upset. And I told her, Mom, it's amazing that I even got pregnant in the first place. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, because I was sexually assaulted and abused by my uncle. And she said to me, no. And I said, what do you mean, no? She goes, no, you're getting that mixed up. And I said, what do you mean I'm getting that mixed up?
And she's thinking, I've never told anybody, and you weren't there. How would you?
Right. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And she told me that she had been away for a time. And then when she came back, she caught my dad with me when I was a baby, sexually assaulting me.
Yeah.
And that was really hard to hear.
Yeah, I don't even understand how you must have felt hearing that.
So she just thought subconsciously that's what she was remembering or something.
Right.
It's like, oh, wow.
And I had to
Talk
convince
about your
her.
whole world just going.
Yeah. And
But
in
at the same time, also explaining a lot. I'll let you say
yeah,
that.
yeah, it was weird because it also explained a lot. It explained why she would never leave me alone with anybody.
Right.
Yeah.
She was always like on top of me over my shoulder, even in the car at the drive-in. No, just kidding. So it explained a lot why she was so protective of me. Mm-hmm. It also explained why I didn't have a relationship at all with my dad. Like I was never really around him. Like he didn't ever talk to me except for go pick up those Legos or go clean your room or whatever, It wasn't always an order. Sometimes it was nice. Sometimes it was, hey, let's go, we're going to go out and pick peaches in the orchard. Let's go, whatever, But I didn't have a relationship with him at all. Like it was just nothing. He was just a man that lived in our house, really, and who went to work and came home and ate ice cream and sat on the lazy boy and fell asleep and snored while we were trying to watch TV. So it explained a lot, but it also kind of threw me into a weird thing. And then I was pregnant. So then I had my son, and I had kind of like this postpartum depression plus finding out your dad had sexually abused you depression going on that was like overloading me.
Yeah.
And and then all that came back with what happened with my uncle too, which was his brother, by the way. So, but it also explained to me why, because I kind of knew with research a little bit that the whole counting and feeling inferior and feeling unworthy and all that would probably stemmed from me being sexually abused. But it didn't explain why I felt that way prior to age 11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which then now that kind of fills in some of those answers. So that was good to have those answers. But so I was dealing with a lot, and I was miserable. And then agoraphobia came in. I could not go to the grocery store without having a panic attack. I couldn't be in crowds at all. I
Yeah, I
feared
remember her
people.
calling me one time. And it was on, we had those big, huge cell phones with the batteries like this thick and stuff, and you weren't supposed to use it for personal stuff. But she called me from home on that. And I was like, "Honey, you're not supposed to call me." She was like, "I can't go to the store." And she was just telling me, I was like, "What do you mean you can't go to the store? Is the car bad?" No, I just can't go. I just can't go. I can't be around people.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Whoa, okay, let me talk to my boss. I'll try to come home as soon as I can," kind of thing. Yeah, it got real bad.
It was really bad. So I started seeing a therapist, and at this point, like we would have said we were Christians. I would have said I was a Christian. We got married in a Christian church. We didn't go to church, but she told me, the counselor, she shared a lot of things that really helped me, first of all. But then at some point, she's like, you know what? You just need to seek a higher power. It was kind of like that moment of deciding, okay, then I'm going to have to ask God to help me, you know?
Yeah.
I was angry. I was bitter. I was fearful. I was depressed. I couldn't go out. I was, in some ways, self-righteous.
Were you suicidal?
No, I wasn't. I was suicidal. I wasn't self-righteous yet. Like
Yet.
I hadn't really kind of gotten
That
into
came
that
later.
yet. That did come later. I was suicidal, not to a degree where.
She's more just where she would hurt herself.
Yeah, I did become a self. I would inflict pain on myself. I would scratch myself or hit myself or bang my head on the wall, or because I didn't feel. The reason I would do that in my mind is that I didn't feel worthy of. Like that's what I felt worthy of. Like that's what I deserved. You know, I deserve to be beat up. I deserve to be hit. I deserve to be scratched. I deserve to be rammed into a wall. That's where my mind was, and my negative self-talk was just off the charts bad. So that's where I was coming from in that moment of going, okay, well, I don't want, and you can read about this a little bit in my book, but I don't want to pass this on to my children
Right.
as this is going to affect them. And so at that point, we still didn't go to church, but I was starting to pray. I knew I had to, because I was so angry. I hated the fact that I was so angry. And I knew that was tied to not forgiving my offenders.
Right.
And I just started praying mostly about forgiveness first, because I really felt like that was where I needed to start. And I started to pray. And every time that the thought of being anything that related to that, what happened to me, came in my mind, I would ask God to help me to forgive them. Help me to forgive them. Help me to forgive them. You know, every day. It was a daily thing all day long, before I went to bed, you know?
Yeah.
And it was something that, I don't know. I just felt like that's where I needed to start. So we ended up, after Taylor was born, then 2 years later, she was born after her brother. And we ended up moving when she was 3. We ended up moving to a small town in New Mexico. Ruidoso. Michael mentioned it not too long ago. And our marriage was, it's kind of weird because it's like we had the best friendship that on the face of the planet. You know, we're so
What kept
close.
us together, yeah.
Right. But intimacy for me was really, really difficult. And I felt violated. And so I share some of this in my book too, so you can read about that there. But it wasn't until, like, I knew Philip loved me unconditionally. Like, I kind of got that. But the moment that he told me that intimacy is not important to me, like, I would love you if you were in a body cast forever and we never had sex again, like, I would still love you. That spoke volumes to me. And it was in that moment then that I realized that's what God's love was, and that God love is what I'm getting from my spouse. And then we were able to start to build trust between us. Like, I could start to trust him, that he actually loved me and he wasn't using me and abusing me like the men had done in my past. So baby steps, like that was just little baby steps of growth right there.
I feel like that's like the whole, yeah, like you're saying, like that is like the whole story of God, like the sacrifice, the thinking about the other person,
Yeah.
the not judging them, you
Right.
know what I mean? Like,
Right. Yeah, and it made me
awesome.
realize that he wasn't judging me or had some issue with me because I wasn't able to perform or I wasn't able to do my wifely duties or whatever. Like, that spoke volumes to me, that was that kind of love that I was receiving from him. You know, it wasn't conditional. It
That's
wasn't.
so powerful concept, like Mike was touching on. Is like that's why this group gets so passionate about the true gospel of grace, and you get so passionate about and wrote a book about it and everything else. It's because that's so transformational to realize that all this religious garbage about performing for God so that He would accept you is so wrong and so backwards from the truth. God, just like you realized, oh, I don't have to perform, I can just be myself. That's what's so cool about the gospel of grace, isn't it? When that day when you realize, you mean God loves me without having to put this facade on or try so hard to be better. He just really loves me. That is exactly right about. That's why grace is so powerful and why it changes everything, and that's why we're so excited to try to get that message out to people, because it's changed all of our lives and tremendously. Because once you get that, you're like, oh wow, and it opens up a whole new world. And I think for you, getting back to your story, your whole life changed when you grasped a hold of the idea that. Because I think you're right. I think you put that, partly because I was at that time too, trying to learn about grace and stuff like that. And we kind of got that together, and it was like once you got the grace message, it's like because the grace message is the gospel, it is the whole thing, right? And so it's like you had it demonstrated, but then you got to connect that to God.
But that took me a few years because
That's true. That's
true. I went through this period first before I got grace. Really,
Thanks
because
to the church.
yeah. So here's the thing. In our marriage, I understood what grace was, but now I am like, once we moved to Ruidoso, I dove in to being a Christian. I dove in. We started going to church. I started, reading my Bible, and I wanted to, because of the false gospel that I was being told, I like you said, overcorrected. I went so far
A new thing to be perfect about.
Right. And
now
boy,
I can perform for God.
I was so thrilled that that's what was required of me, to be perfect for God.
Because you were good at that.
I was great at that. I had, 25 years of experience
That's
of trying to be
I forgot
perfect
about
for
that.
people.
That's right.
And so, it was easy for me to play the role of the good little Christian.
I think that's super common too, that people have that, and I think it's important that we do. And I think you'll dig into this, but like, a lot of that is on the parts of the church, at least, like the religious part of it, which I'm not saying is all wrong or bad or something. The parts of it I absolutely love, the parts that are loving, but it also thinking about it, like stepping away from the religious side of it, just when you're like trying to grasp the idea of a creator, which is like I think the biggest thing that you can ever do in life. There's nothing bigger than that, right? We're talking about the creator, the creation, why we're here, the purpose. When you're doing that, it's really hard to not feel inferior. It's really hard to not feel like, why would he
Yeah.
want anything to do with me? Life's tough. Like, you know, and you see that in a lot of atheists. Well, like, there can't be a God because look at how much evil there is and how much this, but it's like, once you can see the story, like I was saying a moment ago, like in Jordan Peterson outlines this so great, which is how he found Christ, I believe, from following him for years, is seeing that story of sacrifice and love. And once you start to do that, you can realize that you were meant for a purpose and there just happens to be evil in the world, which is different than thinking I'm just a horrible, evil being and I don't deserve God. I don't deserve anything, because I think God, he wants you to follow him. Like your spirit strives for him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're not just garbage. Like,
Right.
like
Yeah,
if we
he
were, he wouldn't
created-
have been the person that created us. He only
Right.
created good. There's sin that's tainted us and hurt us, but that's because we've missed the mark.
Right. We're not perfect at all. That's the
Yeah.
point. Yeah, we're not garbage, but we're not perfect.
Yeah, for
Right.
And I think the idea that, wow, I've got to get more perfect. I got to get closer to the mark in order for God to really accept me. That's the stuff that we're talking about, the religious stuff that's wrong. That's not the gospel. It's not Christianity. It is just not. And so that
And that's the
you
thing.
know,
Like, I was really good at playing that role, and I put that carefully. I played the role of a perfect little Christian.
you did it
but
better than
ins-
people around you, and that's I think what led to.
But inside, I was self-righteous. I was judgmental. I was prideful. I was ugly, on the inside. And then I just felt I didn't feel any better because now,
Swap one product for another.
yeah,
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
now God must have felt like your abuser,
yeah,
right? Like you're replacing your dad, who was the catalyst for all these issues, with now focusing on God. But when you think you have to be perfect for him, just like your parents were trying to make you feel perfect, you probably hop swapped God in there of like, well, he's being so rough on me, but you didn't see it through the lens of him being rough on you. You looked at it like, he loves me so much, but I need to be better for him.
Yeah.
So it's like a reverse, but
Yeah.
it's psychological. I feel like you were
Similar,
doing the
yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
You had a different abuser, just this one was trying to help you.
and even just yeah, there's that, and I think it's also just that you were an excellent person. You were talented. You had spent your whole life being an excellent person. You still are. There's nothing wrong with that. But because you were good at that, because you didn't have a lot of propensity towards like a lot of the trappings of sin and stuff like that, you were really good at that. And so I think it helped. And because the church wasn't saying that's what you should be, I mean, I think it just to give you some credit, it wasn't like that was a wrong thing. And you were doing what you were being told to do,
right.
and you were doing a really good job of it. Probably making people jealous at how good of a job you were doing at it.
I had lots of practice.
but it was, yeah, and so it wasn't like from the wrong heart or something.
No,
like
it
that.
wasn't. It was what I knew. It was what I was taught.
And I think you were probably feeling, wow, I'm finally getting some credit for this thing I've been trying to do my whole life to be perfect, and maybe I'm getting more accolades from God over this. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm getting some God points here or something
Look,
like
God,
that.
I don't swear. Look, God, I keep my kids from watching bad, things on TV. They don't watch anything but G-rated stuff, or we don't have TV at all. Look, God, we don't celebrate certain holidays. Look, God, I don't drink wine. Look, God, I don't, it was all this stuff that I was like cutting out and setting rules and limiting and all this stuff that I was confined in this little box, because if I stepped outside that box, that was devastation. Like I couldn't do that. I had to stay within that little box.
Right.
But I was very judgmental. I couldn't stand in a grocery line without looking at people around me and just start in my mind just judging people. Because I had to build myself up. When we do that, it's because we have to build ourselves up, so we put other people down.
Right.
And I was doing that all the time because I just still didn't feel like I had any value, any worth. I was still dirty. I was still shameful. And now, add on top of that, self-righteous, judgmental, and mean, So that I knew like something had to change. And so eventually So this is where, like, I'm kind of strolling along in that, going to church and realizing this gospel that I'm hearing is not changing me at all. In fact, it's kind of making me worse. And then God did kind of a crazy thing in our lives, and he had us start a church because, as Phil shared, he was always called to be a pastor, and he understood grace message, from his experience with God and the things that he went through and things like that. And he was preaching grace in the sanctuary, and I was teaching Sunday school because we started the church just, very small group of people, and I didn't hear that grace message that much. Because I was always in the Sunday school because we always had
You were
lots of
being
kids.
a good Sunday school teacher, teaching them
I
much
was
legalism.
being a great Sunday school teacher, teaching them legalism. That's right. Exactly.
You didn't call it that, and it wasn't your
No,
heart, but it
no,
ultimately,
but
right.
but we
Do
had
good little children kind of stuff.
exactly,
Yeah.
and I totally would have done it differently if I did.
Sure.
Anyways, so I didn't really get the grace message, but I had him living in my house, and he would start talking about things, and then I realized, like, okay, I'm not getting this grace thing. I got to figure this out. Like, I need to, for me, like, you can tell me that it's about grace, but I'm like you.
This
I'm
is where
like,
you and Michael are the same.
yeah,
Yeah, you
like-
can't just tell me anything. I have to know.
I have
Right,
to know it
right.
for me.
Research.
And so I picked his brain. I not argued, but debated
In a
with
good
him.
way, you argued.
Yeah, I
It
debated
helped,
with
it helped
him.
sharpen my. I had to learn to defend myself. Pretty good.
And I dug into the Word, and I wrestled with God, and it took like probably 5 years,
Yeah.
to really meet out a lot of those things that I kept having questions. Well, what about all these things? And I during that process, so all through that process, I was kind of healing, and I had really cool moments. There was a moment in our church where we had a worship dance team, and they were dancing to Amazing Grace. My Chains Are Gone, that version, and Chris Tomlin's version. And I had this vision, not a vision, but I just envisioned that during that chorus and I do believe God just gave me this, like, I can allow the chains of my abuser's sin to fall off of me. Like, God died for those
I
two.
remember you talking about that night when you came home. It changed you.
It did change me because I got it that Jesus died for my sins. I had gotten that. Like, I was
Right.
free from those chains. But I was still in the chains that my abusers put me in. And it dawned on me that day during that song that Jesus died for those chains too.
He died for them. He died for their sin. He died
Right.
for those chains. He died.
And I was able to allow those
Right.
chains to just drop to the floor in my mind and just step out of them. And that was when, it wasn't until then that I could actually forgive them. Because I had to understand grace more. I had to understand that they're sinners, yep, but so am I. And God doesn't well, your sin gets you a ticket this far, and your sin gets you a ticket this far because it's a lot worse sin, No, we're all sinners, and their sin. God loves them, He created them, and I could start not just being able to forgive them, but I could actually start praying for them and praying for their salvation. And
It's crazy that I've been reading a little bit or watching things, I guess more so about PTSD and what happens to your brain when you're going through a moment that you can remember stuff from when you're 2, barely at all, but you remember like moments that were really crazy. Like maybe your dad swinging you around the room and you were a little bit scared, but you're having fun. And that's kind of implanted into your brain of I could have gotten hurt.
Yeah.
Or, something, a car crash happens, and it's psychologically, I think it might have been Jordan Peterson talking about it, but these things are just so engraved into you. And it's funny when, at least in my experience, and it sounds like with yours, and I think most people at this table, you kind of have those aha moments of Christianity, and they're just as impactful as the car crash.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And it's really weird because
point right
I
back
do
to
my
him.
job 5 years straight, 8 hours a day or more, And I've had no aha moments. I'm training, I'm studying, I'm researching, I'm reading what he says, I'm asking questions, I'm trying to learn, but never have I had a moment that's like that PTSD, like, oh my gosh, like I remember that. Like,
Yeah.
I remember praying in the shower after Sarah died, but I don't remember like that other day. Sure, a lot of that day's in my memory, but that shower is the thing that sticks with me more than sitting by her bed and her dying. When I watched her die, when we listened to her heartbeat, all of that, the shower that changed my life was what I remember. And it's weird.
awesome.
Like, so I think about like how and crazy impactful the spiritual realm is on us in the physical realm. And like you're saying, you can recall this moment
Yeah.
Because
like
I
it
think
was
you're right. I
yesterday.
think during that performance, or whatever you call it, during that praise dance, the Holy Spirit was strong, and I think you're right. It was a spiritual experience because I remember that. I remember it too because I remember it changing you. I liked it, and it was a good experience for me. But what I really remember, like you're saying about that day, is it really changed her. Like she was a different person.
Yeah.
Things were going on, breaking in a good way. Like, and it wasn't instant. I mean, I'd love to let you go back to telling your own story, but a lot of people do say that. Like you had that experience with the vaping. Like, boom, it was gone once you. And that does happen in some kinds of things. Other people, it might take 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
Praise God, it wasn't that long after that with you. But let you get back to telling that. But it wasn't instant, like you said. It was kind of fits and starts.
Yeah, it was.
And yet, I think that the change was in place. It was just a
Yeah.
matter of working through it.
Right. I had to grapple with it, and I had to receive it, and I had to believe it,
Yeah.
And I was so skeptical of it. I think because I was so skeptical that I deserved the
You could
goodness
let
of
go,
God.
that you could let go
Right.
and actually just receive.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people are in that.
I was hanging on, to control. Like control was my big thing. Like if I felt out of control, I would hurt myself. If I felt out of control, I would want to control things, I did, I stopped hurting myself
Praise God.
after a few years. But that didn't persist for real long. Mostly because he would just grab me when I was doing that, and he would just hold me tight and not let me hurt myself.
It made me cry.
Which was good because I didn't hurt myself and I felt that squeeze from him, which was really good. And I was able to forgive, and I was able to slowly trust him with our intimacy issues, and I was able to slowly understand what grace is all about, and I slowly healed, and I'm not there yet. I saw this silly thing on Facebook, this video that said, and I don't even know if it's true, but I saw it online, so it must be true. But it was interesting. It was from a psychologist, I think, and it said this is a indication of PTSD or trauma, childhood trauma, is that it showed this girl, she was eating chips or something in front of the TV, and her husband got home. And she immediately got up off the couch and went over and got behind her computer and was like doing her work. And it was saying that if you feel guilty for enjoying yourself for a moment and you feel like you have to be performing, for people, that's an indication of childhood trauma. And that
That's
just
interesting.
struck me in the heart because I still struggle with that. Still today, I
I do
struggle
that.
with
She
that.
does. Yeah, I have to.
Tell
She'll want to buy something fun or something, and I'm like, "Good, buy it." Well, I don't know. It's like, what do I got to do to convince you? Just buy it, enjoy
Yeah.
it, enjoy it. Yeah, and so not usually. You're getting there with
But
a lot
every-
of that,
but I-
but
but
it's just a part of who you are.
He wakes up a
unfortunately.
lot earlier than me, so by the time I come down and get my coffee, he's like up getting a shower and stuff, and I'll be on my phone just dinking around, like social media or whatever, playing a game or something, and he'll start coming down the stairs, and I'll put my phone down and put my glasses on, and
Pick up the Bible.
but I can't be, like even today
Wow,
that
that's
still
interesting.
happens.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, there's a excuse me. There was a famous Christian author that in recent years, like his wife found out, like realized that she had been abused, and she was talking about her experience, and it's the same exact thing you were just saying, is that she realized that like she was like that as well. Like she would always be worried about everyone else in the room, making sure they were taken care of, make sure they were happy, make sure she was serving them. Like, it was never like she could just relax unless she was completely alone. And I think that was one of the things that played into, like, she had ended up like just kind of leaving him at one point without notice. Just one day he woke up and she was gone when there was just notes. And I think that was like, she just needed to be alone because if she was around people, she had that constant pressure of feeling like she was supposed to be doing everything for them, making them comfortable, making sure they were relaxed. So that's interesting that you said that, because apparently it's a common thing if you've been through trauma like that. So
And it's a common thing. I would say it's accelerated with trauma, but I would say it's a common experience of being human. And I think it's the common reason why people won't receive grace from God. Do you realize that as a pastor for many years, for decades, people that I had the opportunity to get down to in that real deep channel with them, where it was whether or not they were going to receive Christ or not, and really able to explain things and stuff like that, multiple times, people told me, "I'm okay with the idea that God could forgive other people, but not me." It's kind of what you're getting at with that same thing, and I think that, and so I started preaching, and I still preach this: to the extent you receive grace, God is the extent you can give out grace. The extent you receive grace is the extent you can, actually just trust it and whatever else. I mean, but it's the idea is that once you understand that God loves you, digs you, likes you, and is okay with you just how you are, that is such a freeing experience. So we're talking about a shadow of that when we talk about our spouses and stuff like that. And I hope people have relationships where they really could just be themselves. And they are. Like, I wasn't putting that on her. She doesn't put that on me. But those times now, I think more often than not, you're probably not like that, but you're able to, I know even more and more today, like you just feel like you're able to just relax and be yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we need to, I just want so desperately, I don't know what I'm not saying it in the right words, but anybody listening to this, if you don't feel that way about God, I want you to know the truth.
Yeah.
God loves you so much. He digs you. He the last thing in the world he wants you to do is to be worried and put on a facade around him and have to perform for him. He just wants you to be with him. He wants to wrap those arms around you.
Yeah.
And that's,
And I finally came to that point. Like I said, I'm not 100% healed, but I am 99% healed. I feel so free in him, and so my yearning of my heart is I just have so much compassion for people who are in that position that you're just talking about, or people who don't feel worthy of his grace and his love. And my heart breaks. It just really breaks for those people, because I know I've been there. And I am that miracle. I am the one who God said, I love you, and I'm going to take care of you, and I'm going to, gently bring you. It's going to take 30 years, but I'm going to get you there, and it wasn't that God couldn't have done it on day one. I needed that journey.
Yeah.
I needed to go through those things. It allowed us to raise our kids in grace. It allowed me to experience things that I could later write about. It allowed us to live through those things so that we can have compassion and understanding and relate to people who have been through those things. So I don't regret any of that. But I praise God for getting me to the point where I'm at now, where I can share that story with people and share that compassion and that heart with people, because my heart breaks for people who are stuck in legalism, who are stuck in depression, who are stuck in, and I'm not saying don't see a counselor. I think that's very important to see counselors and things like that. But I do know how much, when you understand God's grace, how much that does for you, from thinking that you need to impress God and thinking that you're not worthy of his love, and thinking that the relationship with him is about rules. We were watching a popular news program the other day, and the guy one of the guys on the shows kind of flippantly said, "Yeah, well, that's what Christianity is all about. It's all about rules." And I just, Phil and I were just like, "Oh no, it's not." And I think I'm going to email him.
You should.
Set him
Send
straight.
him your book.
Yeah. But it's not about rules. There's one rule. Believe. I mean, that's the one rule. And that's what now my heart is to preach the gospel and share the gospel.
Do it.
And so I did want to bring up, since this is about me today, my books, because what better time to plug your books than? Okay.
Please do, because it's
So-
all about what we just talked about.
So my first book is Radical Grace, and
Is that a good angle?
Good. Are you picking that up?
okay, so that's Radical Grace. That's my narrative nonfiction, and it has some of the stories that I talked about tonight, but it also has other stories that basically I take you through. I take the readers through the process of kind of the doctrine, basically, of all the foundational stuff about grace, without it being a Bible study. Like, it's just a narrative of what grace is and the biblical foundation of the gospel of grace, and with some anecdotal, stuff in there and you'll laugh, you'll cry. It moved me, Bob. No. So that's my book, my narrative. And then when I was writing this, I really felt like I needed to do a Bible study for those people who are skeptics like me, who I might read a book like this and go, okay, yeah, right,
Prove
Laurel.
it. Prove it in the scriptures.
Prove it. Show me in the Bible. So Fortify Your Faith is a Bible study workbook, and it goes through brick by brick, I call it, of the foundational building blocks of the gospel, and it shows you in the scripture exactly how you can get to this whole grace idea. And I know you go on social media these days, and there's so many different perspectives on grace, and a lot of people say, well, if you preach grace, then you don't care about sin. And I tackle that head on in this book, in this Bible study, and really you just have to rip this man-made garbage down to the basics. And it's about faith in a God who has grace for you, and it's about belief in his righteousness for your own. And that's the simplicity of the gospel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love your first
Powerful
book.
stuff. That's powerful stuff, and it works. I like the fact that it took a long time for you to get to that, because now you are on fire. You're writing. You're a monster about this, and you know all the scriptures, and you live it, and you walk it, and you breathe it, and all that stuff. And I kind of think of it like people, me included, like try to lose weight with different ways sometimes in my life, and I'll go on some crash program or something, and I'll lose like a bunch of weight, and then I gain it all back. And they're now saying the best way to do it is to lose weight slowly through just regular practices and little micro changes. And I think the best way for you to get grace was to just slowly learn it through all these experiences.
Right.
Because you'll never rubber band back. There's no way
No.
you'll ever. These things are fortified in your life.
They absolutely are.
And I'll just, as long as I'm blabbing for a second about you, I also want to just say, as a sweeping statement about your life, because I've been there for most of it. Our parents claimed that we got together in the cribs next to each other in the hospital. So it wasn't quite like that, but pretty close. But I don't know if you remember this, but when I first, within a month or two, when we first started kind of going together and being a thing, I had gone to your house a few times, and it was so awkward there and so weird and stuff. It was so different than my world, where people were just allowed to kind of be themselves and stuff like that. But but I remember really digging you and telling you, I was like, there's like this beautiful, awesome person inside there, but you're just like covered with all of this stuff and abuse and everybody kind of twisting and turning and blaming and putting all this stuff on you. And do you remember I told you, I was like, there's somebody inside there that's so beautiful, and you didn't believe me.
No.
You didn't want to believe me.
Of course I didn't
Do you
believe
remember
you.
me telling you that?
Yeah.
It's okay if you didn't.
I think I do. Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
do remember that. Yeah.
And we had the weirdest things that would happen. Like, I wanted her to learn how to argue and stand on her own, but she was so defeated for herself. So we would get in an argument, and then she would just start letting me just, okay, and sure, fine, I'm just doing. She would just start crying, and I'm like, no, stop.
He's like,
here's the argument you need to make against me. you have a brain. You can say, you know,
He'd
it's kinda
argue
funny.
my side of the thing
Right.
for
It was
me.
weird.
You know?
We really did this.
Yeah.
But I just want to say, fast forward into now, and we're getting to experience that Laurel that I saw in there. You are that beautiful person that God's seen since the beginning, and I knew it was in there. And I was one of the few people that got to experience it way back then, because you could kind of be yourself when we were kids and stuff like that. But this is Laurel. She's a Renaissance woman. She's smart. She's like she is a skeptic in a good way. She likes to dig deep and really get to the bottom roots. Person after your own heart, Michael. And but she likes crazy, funny shoes, and she likes to build Lego, and she likes to do all these, and she likes cute things, and she likes, she loves being a grandma, and a la, I should say.
Yeah.
And you're just the best person that I could have ever imagined. I pinch myself that you came up to me on those bleachers and asked me about football or whatever else, because I just think I am so blessed to have experienced being with somebody that's so rich.
Thank you for hanging in there with me through all that. I put you through the ringer.
No, you've enriched my life in so many ways. And I just think it's so neat. We all get to experience the cool Laurel that's always been there. And I just think that's what God sees. He made each one of us this beautiful, amazing. First, he handcrafted us. And I just think then we put all this goo on top of it. And I just think that's where God's feeling. He's just like, get the goo off, become yourself, and let's explore who I made you to be, That's what you're doing now. You really are at the best part of your life.
I know. I'm enjoying kind of discovering who I really am. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think maybe there's people that think like, oh, if I become a Christian or if I become a believer, like I'm going to lose who I am or something, or like I'm just going to change me in a negative way or something, like I'm going to become boring, or I'm going to become full of rules and regulations, or I'm going to, and I think, at least for me, and it sounds like you're saying this, I think you two would agree as well, like you become more yourself, you become your true self, you become like you're freed to be your true self.
If you
And
get the grace.
If you get grace, yeah.
for sure,
If you
for
become
sure.
the religious type person that you were for a while, I was for a while, you were for a while, you were, I'm sure at some point, like, I think, that's that facade you were talking about earlier. That's that putting up this pretense of trying to look good for God on the outside, when really, like you said, in your mind, in your heart, you may be having all these evil things going on. But yeah, if you get this message that we're talking about of grace, like it frees you to be your true self, and because you're not ashamed of yourself in front of God or other people.
Right.
And so you can really just let that be and let yourself live.
I love that.
Yeah.
I like that about like your generation, and even some of the younger generations younger than that, is they get put down a lot of times. They're like, well, they're not doing the things that, the standards, or they're not doing, they don't know, and they're just too freewheeling, and they do their own thing. And it's like, yes, get the cool tattoo, grow the long hair,
Dye your
Do
hair,
what you wanna
wear a
do.
crazy outfit.
or do,
It's like-
or do all sorts of things that someone would think goody two shoes, because that's what you enjoy. It's not that you have to be the bad personality.
No.
It's not that. Be who you are meant to be. Find it, live it, enjoy it with God, and that's. And I just think the whole generation's doing that. They just think, well, that has nothing to do with God, because God wants to limit me and make me look and feel and taste and not taste, but talk like. Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
He does want you to taste. He does want you to taste salty.
Yeah, there you go. That's what it is. But,
He does want you to taste and see
I
that
think a
he's
lot of-
good.
And that fear you're saying of people, I don't want to become a Christian, because they all start to act and talk and walk and everything the same. And it's like, no, that's not.
That wasn't what
that's
God
not
intended.
it.
That's what
Yeah.
people made it into.
Right.
Yeah.
He created
Right.
us unique. That's the one thing that that through this process I really learned, is that God didn't make us all to be the same. He
Amen.
gave it. He created. He's so creative. Like I'm a creative, and I get that. Like you got curly brown hair, and you've got straighter brown hair, and like someone has red hair, and someone has blonde hair, and the different eye colors,
gray
and and all the different animals, and
I'm
all the
getting
different
there too.
plants, and all the different flowers, and he's like creative, and he made us all unique, and he knit us together in our mother's womb, and he was fashioning us, to be just who we are. And that's the person that I just pray that God would touch touch people with his grace, that they would get his grace so that they could see that that's the beautiful person that God created you to be.
Yeah.
And that's the person that needs to come out.
I agree.
Blossom.
You're all beautiful. Everybody listening to this, you might not want to believe it, but you are beautiful. You are God's handcrafted masterpiece out of Jesus' own words in Ephesians 2. If you're one of those got to prove it in the Bible, Ephesians 2, 8 through 10, says that you're a masterpiece, an actual, like a masterwork of Jesus himself handcrafted you.
Like, that's a really powerful statement. But
Yeah.
that's great stuff.
Well, it's
Well,
been a ride.
Thanks for letting yourself be on the table today, and it's been our
Yeah.
pleasure to hear it and participate, and we all have the pleasure of getting to be a part of your great life. So come back and join us next time as we put something else on the table and discuss it. So we hope you're enjoying this, and if you have any ideas of stuff you'd like us to talk about, then comment in the comments and let us know, and we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to talk about all sorts of different things. We have lots of interest here, and we'll go as deep as we can on anything you want.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.